Once a week, my bosses give me a chance to get something off my chest. And tonight's question is this: should we as a state be in the business of legislating morality, or at least what some consider morality? Some might consider morality a world where there are no LGBTQ people, no people who look or act differently than they do. They are the people, and we have them in positions of power in our legislature, who believe that men should look and act like men and women should do the same. And if in a genetic mix-up, a man should feel like a woman inside, well, that's just tough. Some members of our legislature don't like the idea of transgender athletes competing in sports, even though, for the record, there hasn't been one case in Arizona of a transgender athlete beating her female counterpart. Even though the Arizona Interscholastic Association, which is supposed to be in charge of this kind of stuff, doesn't have a problem with it. And even though the NCAA came out this week and said that any state that discriminates against transgender athletes will not be able to host any championship. Glendale is scheduled to host the Final Four in 2024. But our state legislature didn't stop there, and it's becoming a disturbing pattern. They're now pushing for a law that would enact some of the most restrictive sex education laws in the country. Laws that would prohibit sex ed classes from teaching about sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression unless a parent signs off on it. Except we already have that in place. And if we're being honest, our kids see and hear much worse in the hallways of our schools and on their home computers. Let's not kid ourselves. This all has to do with Nancy Bartow and others in the legislature and their desire to force-feed morality, at least their version of it, to the masses. We have agencies in place to make qualified decisions about education and curriculum and who should be able to compete in sports. Earlier this week, a Texas fourth grader, who's also transgender, addressed the legislature and nailed it.
It makes me sad that some politicians use trans kids like me to get votes from people who hate me just because I exist. God made me. God loves me for who I am, and God does not make mistakes.
Out of the mouths of babes. Our legislature needs to do the same thing. They need to stay in their lane and keep their moral superiority to themselves.